Awesome. Thanks, Charlie. Hi, guys. I'm Helena. I'm the co-founder of 𝗡𝗢𝗡𝗡 with my husband, Simon. And thank you so much for having me. I'm just really excited to be chatting to you guys today. And what I want to talk about is the fact that none of us are normal. And properly understanding this has changed my life. It's released me from a mental prison and properly unlocked a feeling of like freedom and capability that I know is contagious. And that's why I want to talk to you in this session about the power of each of our brains, our individual neurology after what's been quite a transformative year for me personally. I've got a really strong held belief that accepting and understanding neurodiversity is key to enabling the human race to flourish. And during the whole of last year, pre-pandemic, different world, I couldn't shake this feeling that I needed to break through a bit of an existential ceiling that I'd hit up against. And I was feeling quite lost in myself, with a mind that was quite out of control at times. And I was in need of something more, but I wasn't sure what it was or why I was feeling like that. I'm extremely lucky. I've got a truly amazing husband, children, family, friends, and business. So it was nothing to do with any of those things. But during lockdown 1, Simon and I were watching a random TV show, Race Across the World. And in it, there was a young guy aged about 20 who was entering into his adult life struggling with ADHD. I had a full-on light bulb moment. When I was 7, I was diagnosed with ADHD. My entire life, I have blocked it out and pretended to myself and to everyone else that I'd grown out of it. I wrongly believed that ADHD is a behavioural disorder that explained why I was a challenging child. And I didn't ever want it to become an excuse for not succeeding. But a combination of having 2 babies in 2 years and then the stress of lockdown had triggered more of the difficult, severe symptoms than usual. And watching this show and this guy, I literally suddenly remembered that I have ADHD, and it sounds weird, but that is what happened. And cue a massive hyper focus from me, right? So this is an intense focus on subjects that I'm interested in, and it's a hallmark of ADHD because our brains are wired for interest and not information. So I learned loads in a really short space of time and very quickly had a very complete answer as to why I'd been feeling so disconnected from myself. I learned that I experience daily life quite differently from a neurotypical person. And I can't believe that I've gone this long wondering every day what on earth is wrong with me when it turns out the answer is nothing. My brain is just wired differently. I'm getting quite emotional talking about it actually. So what is ADHD? ADHD is a genetic neurobiological condition. Do not get me started on the word disorder, caused by impaired neurotransmitter activity in one or more areas of the brain. So this fundamentally impacts the efficient flow of hormones like dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine. We all know that dopamine is the happy hormone. That's what it's known as, right? It's a neurotransmitter that we all make in our brains, and it plays a vital role in the brain's pleasure and reward systems. It also regulates mood and it regulates muscle movement as well. So put in simple terms, and I'm going to oversimplify it massively, people with ADHD live with a constant dopamine deficiency. If your knowledge on this subject represents anything like the norm, then everything you know about ADHD is wrong. So, like autism, ADHD is a spectrum. Autism and ADHD share a surprising number of symptoms, actually, and you can have both. I don't. ADHD symptoms are extensive. They are internal, they are external. They're pretty astonishing when you first find out about them. ADHD is not the naughty kid syndrome. I want to be really clear on that. It's not bad parenting. It's not something that the person with ADHD has any control over. And it's also not categorically something that everybody has. So What happens when you have low dopamine levels? A lot of things, including several behaviours that have traditionally characterised ADHD, right? Like distractibility and difficulty concentrating, sitting still, lack of motivation. An ADHD brain is in constant, exhausting state of self-stimulation to try and get dopamine going. So that often means uncontrollable impulsivity and hyperactivity in your brain and in your body. And it can also result in dangerous addictions as well. When dopamine levels are low, people with ADHD have trouble with working memory, thick brain fog, managing and prioritizing daily tasks, and even solving simple like cognitive problems. I get huge mood swings and rage outbursts. Bipolar disorder, interestingly, is the most common misdiagnosis for ADHD. So these mental symptoms are similar to depression and anxiety, both of which can be a symptom of ADHD as well. Physical symptoms include involuntary muscle movements like tremors, restless legs, itching like horrific itching, and lack of coordination, also known as clumsiness, which I'm extremely well known for. A big symptom for me is overstimulation and hypersensitivity to emotional and physical stimuli. So for example, I can experience a lot of pain processing auditory stimulation. So I can be talking to someone and there might be like a fly on the other side of the room that is buzzing around and they won't even notice that fly, and I feel like it is literally boring into my brain and I can't think about or focus on anything else. It's only now that I know that that's strange to somebody that doesn't have that particular joy. A Harvard study found that by the age of 12, a child with diagnosed or undiagnosed ADHD has received on average 20,000 additional negative criticisms than a child without. And it doesn't take a neuroscientist to work out the impact on a person of that kind of daily trauma. Every person with ADHD and other conditions experiences it differently. And many of these symptoms are mislabeled in a society that doesn't fundamentally understand them. Children and adults with ADHD, it's very rare that you grow out of ADHD. Are made to believe that they have a disability, right? So instead of understanding that it can be a huge strength, which I'm going to come on to, they're given the message that it's a flaw that needs solving through medication. They're told that they need to change. And this desperation to fit in is not only soul crushing, but it's holding back the human race. I credit my own ADHD with all the things that I've come to love about myself. So I really consider it a superpower because the flip side of it has got the power to change the world. In a positive dopamine flowing environment, hyperactivity manifests as drive. An inability to focus on boring stuff switches to an abnormal ability to focus intensively on subjects that I love. We're lifelong learners, lateral thinkers, and extremely caring due to hypersensitivity. So you'll find that people with ADHD often have an ability to read energy, a bit like a book, an incredible connection to nature as well, and a desire to change social injustice. You'll find a lot of human rights lawyers have ADHD. I personally believe that ADHD is only viewed as a negative because society is getting more rigid and more negative and more indoors. So it's no surprise that the difficult symptoms are becoming more and more obvious. The dopamine is just getting lower and lower as a baseline. But from Walt Disney to Serena Williams and Richard Branson and Emma Watson, there are just so many people who are famous for their impact on the world that have ADHD. And what about today? This year, we've seen, and I'm going to say it, an unprecedented emotional impact on our society. Negative emotion is rife, and more people than ever are experiencing the symptoms of low dopamine and high cortisol, high stress, whether they've got ADHD or not. It's well researched that under stress and negative emotion, we humans, all humans, we shut down. We go into like a fight, flight, freeze mode. We narrow our minds to focus on survival, and we just can't be bothered to do things. We don't reach our potential. And in positive psychology, the power of positive emotion is also really well studied. It broadens our horizons, and it improves our ability to think creatively. And it's for that reason that I really believe positive emotion moves the human race forward. We're living in a society that quite heavily dictates what we should be doing with ourselves on a daily basis, rather than leaning into what feels good. And the importance of fun is grossly underestimated, in my opinion. We judge people who are different, and we're holding ourselves back. Personally, I'm a huge advocate of the power of positive emotion, and I believe that the best higher purposes in life are those that make sense of your past. And it's only this year, 5 years into TrueStart, that I realized that I've literally created my own treatment in my business in TrueStart. TrueStart literally exists to spread massive positive energy and be relentlessly optimistic in a world that needs it. And I'm not talking about like glitter and unicorns and like toxic positivity that denies proper emotion. I'm talking about all the genuinely positive stuff like determination and awe and joy. And for the first time in my life, I know I've always felt it. I've been lucky enough to be in an environment that's enabled me to follow my sort of gut. But I know I was put in this earth to make people feel good and have a meaningful impact on their daily life so they can get up and do what they're supposed to do. It doesn't matter what that is, reach their potential. And I actually realise now this is why I was drawn to coffee for my business, because it's such a good vehicle to reach as many people as possible with that feeling. A bit of an added bonus is that caffeine actually increases the dopamine availability in our brains, in all of our brains. Which definitely explains why it makes me feel calm, sort of contradictory to what you might think caffeine is for. But following your gut pays off is what I'm trying to say. And I'm very lucky that I've been able to I've been given the environment by my parents and my husband to fully express myself and figure myself out. But what I want to encourage you to do in this talk is to celebrate your own superpowers. Because I was speaking to someone the other day, we were just chatting in conversation, and I said something, I can't even remember what it was. And she went, "How did you think of that? My brain would never get there." And I said to her, "But your brain would go a million places that mine wouldn't." And being different is such a blessing. And luckily, every single one of us is different. Like, we're all different. And your superpower doesn't have to be noisy and in your face. Don't value yourself based on how much attention you attract. Forget about likes on social media, because whether you're neurotypical, neuro-divergent, whether you are an employee or you have your own business, we all have a truly unique brain that holds its own superpower, and you can find it by following what feels good to you, because really none of us are normal, right? And why do we keep trying to fit in when each and every one of us was born to stand out in our own way? That's everything from me. I don't know how I kept that to 10 minutes.
Neither do I. So I was warned you might talk quite a lot, but you've done incredibly. To sum that up, I'd like to just refer to the chat where Shania has written, "Helena, I can't put into words how much I've enjoyed your talk." And Ina has said that the energy really touches you, and it really does.
Thank you.
I think as myself as quite an energetic person, but you've blown me out of water. So, yeah, absolutely fabulous. I've always known I wasn't normal, but to have somebody else say that is really lush. And so thank you for sharing such personal such personal detail. It's been amazing to hear you talk. So,
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh.